Okay.
I put this here.
So,
Put this here.
the two-house theory. I had somebody tell me, I asked somebody if they were one Torah. They said yes. And then, after I talked to them for a little while, come to find out they're two-house. So,
Okay.
can you be one Torah and two-house?
Okay, let's start at the very beginning. Unfortunately, the Ephraimite movement, the MIA, Messianic Israel Alliance, or now what they're calling themselves apparently is Redeemed Israel. This is Bacha and Agnes Wooten and their group. The first thing you have to understand is that they do the same thing that, unfortunately, a lot of other, I have to be careful here, offshoot, errant parts of religious movements across the board do this. They use the same terminology, but they redefine it, and they don't tell you that. For instance, one of the things that you don't realize until you've been around it for a while is that if you're talking with people that are two-house, Ephraimite, whatever they want to call themselves, is that when they say Jew, they mean people that are descended from the tribe of Judah.
So not Israel.
When they say Israel, they mean the 10 tribes, the so-called lost 10 tribes, or what they refer to as Ephraim. And granted, Ephraim is used in the prophets to refer to the northern kingdom because it was the largest tribe. So it became kind of known as Ephraim. And so when you say one Torah, what we're meaning by that is it's one Torah. God has one Torah, one shepherd, one people, but that one people is made up of both physical descendants from Jacob, which would include all of the tribes, as well as those that are of the nations which are not physical descendants of Jacob.
But I've heard two people that hold the two-house theory say, "Oh no, I believe that Gentiles are coming in."
Well, that's very interesting. Several summers ago, I read through the second enlarged edition of Bacha Wooten's Who is Israel, and I just, I took a little time every day, and I just went through and I marked up almost every page, and at the back I wrote, what I did was I just numbered them, but I put the page numbers of the craziness. I'm not saying that Botch is crazy. Please understand that. I believe that she's probably a wonderful sister in the Lord, and I'm sure that she's zealous for what she believes. But you can be zealous and be wrong.
Well, ain't that the truth?
Yeah. So basically, it's embarrassing to say it, but to be honest with you, but it's the truth. Every Greek word in this publication is misspelled.
Oh no.
I went through, and every time I came to it, and they put it, they wrote it, she wrote it, or whoever did the final copy wrote the Greek words in Greek, okay? Well, any first-year student who has had 3 weeks of Greek would know that you never have 2 final sigmas on a word. Every time, a final sigma is a final sigma. You don't have 2 of them. They misspell omega and omicron.
So she doesn't know Greek.
Okay, but the other thing is, wait a minute. The other thing is, at the very beginning, I'm saying to myself, "Are you kidding me?" She refers to it as the Brit Hadashah. And probably the reason that she does that is because that's how she heard people talking about the Brit Hadashah. She didn't realize it was Chadashah.
Okay, so she doesn't speak the biblical languages, but that doesn't necessarily mean she's wrong, right?
Okay, but what does she do? All the way through this book, she takes one Strong's number, then finds that same number somewhere else, and says they're basically talking about the same thing.
What's the okay? Well, we all know that's you can't
okay.
do that,
So what I'm saying,
what's the premise of the book, though?
Okay, but just let me say this: the book is predicated upon very, very bad methods of interpreting the Bible. It's taking words and making them metaphoric, and then changing them, taking them to another place. So she's doing with the words of the Bible the same thing that she does with the terminology that she uses. That's my point. In other words, if it says, for instance, she makes a big point of the fact that Yeshua's blood could not be the same as human blood. Why? He was fully human. So then she morphs to the point where she says, so if you're part of the family of Yeshua, then you must have his bloodline. Now, both in her newest book, which is The Redeemed Israel, and it's basically a cut and paste from here, from her earlier books, she says on page 153, the heading is Calling All Non-Jewish Believers Ephraim. Should we call all non-Jewish believers Ephraim?
No, when she says Ephraim, she means the rest of Israel.
So she means the northern tribes. So should we call all non-Jews, that would be related to the tribe of Judah, should we call all non-Jewish believers who aren't related to the tribe of Judah, yeah, should we call them Ephraim? If we do, does that mean there are no true Gentiles among us? None who are not biologically related to Abraham among the Ephraimite followers of the Messiah? No, it does not. To believe that the Father is primarily gathering Israelite branches does not mean we deny salvation to those who are not physically related to Israel, because both houses include converts. Moreover, we call the converts to Judaism Jews, that is, converts to those who are related to the tribe of Judah. You have to keep thinking that. Thus, we would be guilty of using a double standard if we denied the title of Ephraimite to olive branches who long ago became wild.
Is she saying that there's no such thing as a Gentile?
What she's saying is that basically, and she says it very clearly in both of these books. Let me see if I can find it, because this is kind of the crux.
Isn't this? Doesn't that relate to British Israelism?
It's very close. It's in fact, in her earlier books, she used quotes from British Israelite people to prove her point.
And that's basically saying that Britain was
she does the same thing. She says the tribes, and by the way, I don't think they were ever lost. Okay,
so where are they?
Hitler didn't seem to lose them. Well, the idea that everyone who calls himself a Jew must be from the tribe of Judah is, again,
that's ridiculous.
Yeah, Yehudoi in the Greek, or Yehudim in the Hebrew, does not mean from the tribe of Judah. As late as the Maccabean period and on into the first century, this title of Yehudim or Yehuda meant living in the region of Judah. So you could be from any tribe. It would be like, no matter what ethnicity you were, if you lived in Tacoma, you'd be a Tacomaite, you'd be a Washingtonian. Okay, so these titles lose their connection to a clear ethnicity bloodline and talk about basic people group, people identification. I mean, Paul was of the tribe of Benjamin. He called himself a Jew. So
what about the idea? Isn't there's a theory out there that, and we've seen this on documentaries, the tribes were sent to all the different corners of the earth. So Germany is really one tribe, and Britain is another tribe, and Africa is another tribe, and Ethiopia is another tribe. The main continents all have a tribe, and all the main people groups.
There's nothing, just because, and she quotes some of the rabbis from earlier, from Middle Ages and later. Look, this idea is that somehow the tribes remained, unto themselves and so forth and so on. No, they've been scattered. There's no doubt about that. God promised us that he would scatter the tribes. He said, if you disobey me, I will scatter you amongst the nations. Okay? Now, the big crux of the two-house theory is that when the people of Israel, and now I'm using the terms as we normally would, people that were of the 12 or 13 tribes, and they were dispersed amongst the nations in the diaspora, okay, in Galut. The idea that they lost their identity And then, of course, the 2 House says, speaking of the promise that was made to Abraham, you will be the fullness of nations. So, fullness of goyim. So they say, okay, they lose all of their identity. They don't know who they are. They forget who they are. They consider themselves Gentiles. They don't even know. They've lost all connection to any relationship to Abraham, to Jacob, so forth and so on. And then they start living like Gentiles. She talks about the Ephraim eating pork and so forth and so on. Okay. Then, now, in this last days, God is awakening these people to their true identity. And how is he doing that? By bringing them back to Torah. But basically what she says here, that genetics cannot be proven one way or the other. She says, on the other hand, the fact that genetics cannot be proven does not give us license to rob of their hope. In other words, those who want to call themselves Israel. Those who do believe that they are of Abraham's biological seed. If they believe that they are physically part of the people of promise, then we should not try to divest them of that hope. In other words, if they want to say, look, I'm physically related to Jacob, how can we disprove that? So she's basically going on this kind of an approach that, well, you can't prove it one way or the other. If you want to be, sure, you can be. And some years ago, they had a conference up in Seattle, and someone who was up there had a book table, and they weren't necessarily connected with the 2 House people, but they were there at the conference selling their books and selling their things. They wanted to have some of our stuff there. Okay. So Gary Springer, our administrator, and myself, we piled a bunch of stuff in the car and drove it up to Woodinville. Okay, so we're unloading these boxes. We're not going to stick around. We're just giving them to the person who's buying them from us to sell on her table. And I poked my head into the auditorium where they're all set up for the first session. And Boccia was there. I didn't. She was busy. I didn't have opportunity to greet her and so forth. But they were all there. Well, they had these banners on the walls of the 12 tribes. And I asked the person, one of the people that were involved in setting it all up, I said, if you don't mind me asking, what is the purpose of this? And he said, one of the exciting things that we do at these conferences is we ask everyone to go stand underneath the banner that they believe is their tribe. I said, well, how would they know? He said, well, we have ways that we try to, for instance, certain tribes have certain characteristics. So, like if you're more of a student, or if you're more of a servant, or if you're more of what your gifting is, would
so
indicate.
If your favorite color is purple, go stand under this flag.
I don't know, but again, I don't in any way deny the desire of these people to find an identity, but it misses the mark.
So, okay, wait, hang on just a sec. So what you're saying is that Boccia Wooten, who seems to be the poster child for 2 House theory.
Well, at least for part of it, Koniakowski, she quotes Koniakowski favorably in this book. I don't know if she does in this. I've read only 3/4 of this one, so I can't say, but she quotes him favorably. He had quite a Arms to Israel, I think was the name of his group. I don't know if he's still around or not. He went into polygamy and went into other kinds of errant kinds of things, so I don't know if he's kind of fallen off the map.
Okay, but
basically, she's one of the main voices.
So
yeah.
what she's saying is that if you believe in Yeshua, you're one of the lost tribes.
She would say, not necessarily, but the majority of people who have come to faith in the Messiah, and I think she would say, and are drawn to Torah.
So anyone who's drawn to Torah is one of the lost 12 tribes.
If they don't have clear generational connection to Jewishness, which would be to the southern tribes, Judah. She wouldn't, I don't think, include Levi there, but Judah and Benjamin.
So who cares? What's the issue?
Because then she would say, well, then you have an identity that gives you privilege and gives you obligation. You have an obligation to be like who you are. So there again, it's not one Torah as we understand it. As we understand it.
So what though? So she says, I mean, so what's the big deal? So she says everybody has, I mean, okay. So you think that everybody who
yeah, basically because she's saying no one can know. So, and if you want to say you are, you can.
So what? So what does that do for us?
Well,
it
means that the faithfulness of God in bringing both the descendants of Jacob to faith and the nations to faith, and making of the two one family, is not seen. If everybody is part of the same family, he's just bringing the family back together. Well, that's not he says, and in your seed all the nations of the earth shall be blessed. God's faithfulness is seen when Jew, now I'm using it in the biblical sense and in the sense that was used in the time of the apostles. Jew meaning relating to Jacob. I mean, Paul can switch between Jacob and Jew without any problem in Romans 9, 10, and 11. Okay? So, and he uses Israel and Jew synonymously too. He says all Israel will be saved. He doesn't mean by that the lost 10 tribes.
So what you're saying is that the two-house theory is really an attack on the Abrahamic covenant.
They wouldn't see it that way.
But that's how you see it.
Yeah, absolutely. In other words, well, Caleb, I don't think my Jewish identity or anyone's Jewish identity is the primary issue. Okay, I think the primary issue is identity in Yeshua.
Okay, but doesn't your theology, let's play devil's advocate, UMJC would say that your theology makes it so that there's really no distinction between Jew and Gentile.
No, they would say that, but what they don't understand and are unwilling to admit is that if you come to a group like our group at Beit Hillel and you ask one of the young men who's wearing a kippah and tzitzit, you say, "Hey, are you Jewish?" And he might say, "Yes, I am." But if he's not, he'll say, "No, I'm not. I'm a Gentile." And so, well, you sure look like a Jew. Yeah, okay. Well, when I'm with this group of people, I look like maybe if Yeshua was here, I would look like him. But the point is that the same thing happened in the first century. The Gentiles who were coming into the synagogue were charged the Fiscus Judaicus, and they were charged as being Jews when they weren't.
But you know what
by the outsiders.
But you know what the UMJC is going to say? Okay, well then what benefit is it to being Jewish? I mean, obviously you're trying to take away Jewish identity.
No.
Because the Gentiles look just like the Jews.
Well, looking like something isn't being something.
Okay, so what's the benefit of being Jewish then?
The benefit of being Jewish is proving that God is faithful to his covenant. He said that he is the God of Israel, which means Israel must remain. Physical Israel must remain forever, or one of his names goes away. That means when there are Jews who are Jewish and who have Jewish heritage and Jewish lineage, and they confess Yeshua, they say, okay, that proves God is faithful. But the same thing is true when you have Gentiles who say, I'm not Jewish. Sure, I'm with the Jews. I may be from the outsiders. The outsiders may consider me Jewish. I mean, you say, okay, well then, what does that prove? It proves the faithfulness of God. He said, in your seed, through you, in you, all the nations of the earth will be blessed. Let me use this analogy. You have somebody who's a big-time Norwegian, and he does immigration to the States, okay? And he keeps his Norwegian heritage. I mean, they eat Norwegian food, they celebrate Norwegian holidays, whatever, and so forth and so on. Well, 3 generations later, his kids are all viewed as Americans. When they get together with their family, guess what? They eat Norwegian food, they talk about Norwegian things, maybe sometimes they bring up Norwegian language. Okay, everybody knows that works with him that he's Norwegian. He talks about it, he acts like it, whatever. Everybody on the outside says what? He's an American. He's like everybody else. We don't maintain our identity by how we dress, by whether we wear a kippah, by what we eat, and so forth and so on. We maintain our identity by our confession of who we are, and particularly in the body of the Messiah, but who we are in him. We have Jew, we have non-Jew. Now some, say, well, we shouldn't call them Gentiles because Gentile can mean pagan. It can in some cases, but in other cases it doesn't.
And Israel's called Gentiles.
Yeah, called goy.
Yeah.
A nation. It simply means a nation. But the point is that in the Bible, oftentimes nations are put over against or distinct from Israel. You have Israel here, you have the nations there. And he says, I will destroy all the nations that come up against you. I mean, the prophets are clear on this. If we allow the Bible to speak in its own terms, we see that the grafting in of the branch, of the wild branch, bears the same fruit as the branch that is natural in the tree. They bear the same fruit. What is the metaphor there? Well, fruit are our works. By their fruit you will know them. Okay. Well, when you see a branch on an olive tree and it's having olives, what do you say? It's an olive branch. You don't say, well, that's a wild olive branch. But the husbandman knows. He says, guess what? 2 years ago, I grafted that in from a wild olive tree over there. And somebody who's keen on engrafting and everything might be able to spot that, say, well, that obviously was a graft. That one wasn't. Okay. Inside, we keep those clear distinctions. When somebody outside asks a sower, man, I didn't know there were so many Jews in Tacoma. Well, why do you say that? Well, look at all the people that are going into the building there. Well, they're not all Jews. What about you? Are you Jewish? No. Then why are you with the Jews? Because that's what God promised. That in your seed all the nations of the earth shall be blessed. That we would be one family, one flock, one shepherd, one Torah, one way of righteousness, one faith, and why one baptism? Paul says there's one faith, there's one Lord, one faith, one baptism. Why one baptism? Why does he bring that in? Well, guess what? In the first century, they were saying you had to have another one. Okay, so you came to faith in the Messiah, and you did a mikveh as witness of that. But that's not enough. You need to get legal Jewish status. We can help you with that. Okay? You need to get circumcised. You need to give a sacrifice. You need to go to the temple. And the last thing you do is you need to have a mikveh. So, well, I did a mikveh in the name of Yeshua. So, well, no, yeah, okay, that's good. We like that. But you got to do a second one here. Paul says, no, one baptism. For the Gentile, there's one baptism in terms of identity into the body of the Messiah. You cannot become a Jew. You cannot become physically lined up with Jacob if you're Paul and the apostles as well as the prophets and Yeshua himself are saying having physical lineage to Jacob is not make you righteous. This has been the thing. I mean, I was just reading Jeremiah again last night, and what are they saying? What are the teachers saying to Jeremiah? Oh, come on, we're chosen. Peace, shalom, shalom. Everything's going to be okay. God chose us. We're in. And Jeremiah says, you're not in. You're going to be taken away. You're going to be taken away and dispersed, and there's nothing you can do about it. But in the other days, in days after this, God's going to make a new covenant with you. Okay, so just having physical lineage to Jacob, while that's important because that proves God's faithfulness in maintaining his people as he promised he would, and that's why it's important to say, well, then we have Gentiles who are brought into the people, who are grafted in, okay, who are added into the people, into the remnant, by way of faith in the Messiah. But the distinction is all important because God made a promise to physical Israel or the descendants of Jacob, and he made a promise to the nations. And both of those promises have to be fulfilled if God is going to be seen as faithful, and he is. So when we try to mix this, now, our opponents say, well, you mix it by wearing a kippah. See, if you're not Jewish, you shouldn't wear a kippah. If you're not Jewish, you shouldn't wear tzitzit. If you're not Jewish, you shouldn't keep Sabbath. You shouldn't keep kosher. You shouldn't keep the festivals or whatever. And again, let me appeal to whoever's watching this or listening to this or whatever. Where does this divine invitation fit in? If you invite the Gentiles, those of you who say that we One Torah people are undermining the identity, the Jewish identity of the Jewish people, why do you invite the Gentiles in then to do this? Are you inviting them to some kind of conversion? A second baptism? Is that what you're inviting them to?
Trying to get a paycheck, maybe? Fill up the offering plates.
Okay, well, I know that one gentleman that I highly respect tells me every time, follow the money, you'll find the answer. Okay, well, I don't know. But all I'm saying is that you ought to you ought to be honest with your theology. If you're going to say, if you do this, you're being crypto-supersessionists, as Stuart Dowerman says of us, well, then don't invite the Gentiles in.
Well, I don't think Dowerman does anymore.
Okay, maybe not. But I'm just saying, you have others, you have FFOZ and others are saying, well, we invite the Gentiles in, but wait a minute. If you invite them in, aren't they going to look like you? Aren't they going to act like you? Aren't they going to eat like you? I mean, I don't get it. And then when your daughter sets eyes on this Gentile boy, what about that? Well, then, according to David Rudolph, he says, well, then the one that's Gentile should convert. Then we give them legal status, and then everything's okay. Where do you find that in the Bible?
So now we're getting into one Torah theology.
But all I'm saying is that when you say what you started out with saying, well, don't they believe in one Torah? Yeah, but they believe it because they say
everyone's Jewish.
Everyone is related to the tribes.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's really not what we're saying, one Torah. Now, I think Bacha and the rest of them would say, even if you're not related, and you don't even think you're related, or you're certain you're not related, and you want to keep Torah, great, we think you should. So in that regard, I can see it. But when they say one Torah, they basically mean, yeah, we're all part of the tribes. So this is the Torah that was given to us at Sinai.
Okay.